The galaxy was dark and filled with the sounds of distant battles. The alien empire known as the Jaru had expanded for centuries, conquering planet after planet. Their ships were fast, their weapons powerful, and their armies vast. They showed no mercy to any civilization they encountered. Now they were approaching Earth, and humanity's future seemed uncertain. Humans had always believed that they were alone in the universe. For centuries they had stared up at the stars, imagining what lay beyond, but never truly expecting to encounter anything beyond their small world. They had read about aliens in stories and movies, but it was all just fantasy, nothing that would ever affect them. But now, Earth was under threat. The Jaru fleet appeared on the edge of the solar system. It was a cold, silent arrival, like the calm before a storm. Humanity's leaders scrambled to prepare, but they knew they didn't stand a chance. The humans had no advanced weapons, no powerful ships that could match the alien threat. Earth's strongest military forces were no match for the alien empire's technology. In a last-ditch effort, Earth's leaders turned to an old, forgotten hope, something that had been dismissed as myth for centuries. They knew that humanity's ancestors had once believed in powerful creatures, monsters they were called. Legends spoke of massive beasts that ruled the planet long before humans came to dominate. These creatures were said to be as old as the Earth itself, ancient beings that lived deep beneath the surface of the planet, hidden from the world for thousands of years. Desperate for any chance of survival, the world's leaders decided to act. They would send a message to the stars, not just asking for help, but calling on these very monsters from Earth's past. Perhaps they had been waiting, biding their time, ready to defend the planet when the time came. They sent out a signal not to the alien empire, but to the ancient beings they had long forgotten. The transmission was brief and simple. "We need your help. The invaders are here. Save us." The message traveled through space, sending ripples through the void. It wasn't just a cry for help, it was a plea. It was a call for Earth's monsters, the ones from the old stories, the ones that were feared and revered in equal measure. The world's leaders waited in silence, hoping that someone or something would hear their call. Back on Earth, the planet continued to prepare for the worst. People filled the streets, packing up their belongings, trying to flee the incoming invasion. Many believed the message had no chance of reaching anyone, let alone the legendary creatures. Others whispered that it was foolish to rely on ancient myths. Some laughed, dismissing it as a last-ditch effort by a frightened world. But deep down, many people, especially the older generation, remembered the old stories, and they wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was some truth to them. Meanwhile, deep beneath the surface of the Earth, something stirred. It wasn't just the rumbling of tectonic plates or the movements of underground creatures. It was something far older, something far more powerful. Far below the Earth's crust, hidden in forgotten caverns and secret chambers, the ancient monsters began to awaken. The first to stir was the Kraken. For centuries it had been resting in the deep oceans, slumbering in the cold darkness of the sea. Its massive tentacles stretched out, feeling the change in the air, the disturbance in the Earth's core. It was aware of the call that had been sent, and it responded. It could feel the alien ships approaching, and it knew that it was its time to rise. The Leviathan, a creature of massive size and immense strength, also awoke. Its body, once hidden beneath the ocean's surface, began to shift and move. The water around it churned and swirled as the creature began to rise from its deep, underwater cave. The Earth trembled as the Leviathan made its ascent, feeling the weight of the alien threat in the air. Other monsters began to awaken as well. Creatures that had been buried for ages, creatures of myth and legend. There was the Chimera, a beast, with the body of a lion, the wings of a dragon, and the tail of a serpent. It stretched its powerful limbs, sensing the call from above. The Manticore, a giant scorpion-like creature with a human face, hissed and swayed its tail, ready for battle. Each of these creatures had one thing in common. They had been created long ago, in a time before humans, for a purpose. That purpose was now becoming clear. As they awakened, they felt the presence of the alien invaders, and they knew it was time to defend the planet. The ancient beings were not just creatures of power. They were guardians, protectors of Earth. Their purpose had always been to protect the world from threats beyond its skies. On the surface, humanity continued to prepare for the coming invasion. The alien ships were closing in, and the human armies were on high alert. But no one knew what was about to happen. No one knew that Earth's ancient monsters were already rising, their power growing stronger by the hour. The world's leaders, who had sent the call into the stars, had no idea that their plea had been answered. The aliens would soon find themselves facing a new kind of enemy, one they had never encountered before. Earth's monsters were about to make their presence known, and they were not going to allow an invasion to succeed. Earth, it seemed, had its own ancient protectors that were ready to defend their home once again. The sky over Earth darkened as the first wave of alien ships entered the atmosphere. Massive vessels shaped like jagged spikes, they shimmered with an eerie glow. Their arrival sent waves of panic through the cities below. People ran through the streets, gathering in shelters, hoping for some form of protection. The world's military forces braced for the worst, preparing to launch everything they had against the invaders. But they knew deep down that their weapons were not nearly enough. The alien empire, the Jaru, was not known for mercy. They had conquered countless planets, each one falling with little resistance. Earth had no real defense against their advanced technology. It wasn't just the strength of their weapons, it was the overwhelming size of their forces. Earth's military was no match for the Jaru's relentless advance. But as the alien ships moved closer, something began to stir deep beneath the Earth's surface. The monsters of legend, creatures that humans had long believed to be nothing more than stories, were awakening. These ancient beings were older than any human civilization, older than the very mountains and oceans of the planet. They had been lying in wait, hidden from the world for centuries, ready for the moment when Earth would need them most. The first to rise was the Kraken. Long trapped in the deep oceans, it had been slumbering in its underwater cave, dreaming of the time when it would be called upon to protect the world. As the alien fleet approached, the Kraken stirred, its massive body shifting and coiling. The waters of the ocean began to boil as its enormous tentacles pushed against the sea floor. With a force that shook the very earth, the Kraken rose from the depths. The ocean roiled, and waves crashed against the shore as the creature made its way toward the surface. The Kraken's emergence was felt worldwide. People in coastal cities stared in awe and fear as the massive creature rose from the water. Its tentacles, each one as thick as a building, whipped through the sea, tearing apart anything in its path. The alien ships, unaware of the creature's existence, moved closer to Earth's atmosphere, preparing for their attack. But the Kraken had other plans. With a deafening roar, it reached up, its tentacles wrapping around the alien ships like they were nothing more than toys. The alien vessels struggled, but the Kraken's grip was unbreakable. With a mighty heave, it pulled the ships into the depths, dragging them beneath the waves. While the Kraken fought in the oceans, another ancient creature stirred far beneath the earth. The Leviathan, a massive beast with scales as hard as stone, woke from its slumber. It had been hiding deep in the planet's crust, its enormous body curled around the core of the earth. But now, it could feel the vibrations from the alien ships above. It was time to rise. The ground trembled as the Leviathan pushed itself upward, its massive form breaking through layers of rock and soil. The earth cracked open as the creature's head broke through the surface, its glowing eyes scanning the skies. The Leviathan roared, a sound so powerful that it shook the very air. Its long, muscular body slithered out of the ground, and with every movement, the earth shook. The giant creature lifted itself from the earth's depths, towering over the cities that lay below. As the Leviathan emerged, the humans who had once doubted the old stories could no longer deny the truth. The creatures of legend were real, and they were here to defend Earth. The appearance of the Kraken and the Leviathan was just the beginning. Other monsters began to stir as well. Deep in the forests, the Chimera, a creature with the body of a lion, the wings of a dragon, and the tail of a serpent, stretched its powerful limbs. It had been resting for centuries, but now it was awake and ready to fight. The manticore, a giant scorpion-like creature with a human face, hissed as it emerged. From the caves where it had slept for millennia, the world was being overrun by the very creatures that humanity had once feared. But the humans were still unsure what to make of these monsters. Some believed they were the salvation they had hoped for, while others feared they would become another enemy. The military, unsure whether to trust these ancient beings, began to gather intelligence. They watched as the Kraken tore apart the alien ships and the Leviathan moved through the cities, its massive body casting shadows over everything in its path. The alien fleet had been caught off guard. They had expected to face only human resistance, but now they were fighting something far more terrifying. The monsters of Earth were not the mindless creatures they had imagined. They were intelligent, powerful beings, capable of taking down even the most advanced alien technology. But the Jaru were not easily defeated. They quickly regrouped, sending their remaining ships to engage the monsters. The alien weapons were strong, but they were not prepared for the power of Earth's creatures. The Kraken, with its massive tentacles, crushed alien ships with ease. The Leviathan, with its powerful jaws and massive tail, struck fear into the hearts of the invaders. The Chimera and the Manticore fought with fierce determination, attacking the alien forces from every direction. As the battle raged on, humans watched from the sidelines, unsure of what their role was in this strange new war. The monsters were fighting to protect Earth, but would they stop once the aliens were defeated? Or would they continue to fight, turning their wrath on humanity? The world had no answers, only questions. But one thing was clear: Earth's monsters had returned. And the Jaru would soon learn that they had underestimated the power of the planet they sought to conquer. The alien fleet had been prepared for many things, but they were not prepared for Earth's monsters. The Jaru, with their advanced weapons and massive ships, had thought they would easily crush Earth's defenses. But what they hadn't expected was the fury of creatures from humanity's past, monsters of myth, long forgotten by the people they were meant to protect. The Kraken continued its assault on the alien ships, its massive tentacles wrapped around anything that dared come too close. With each powerful swing, the ocean churned and shook. Alien ships that tried to flee were dragged beneath the waves, their energy shields no match for the Kraken's unyielding grip. The creature's deep roar echoed across the water, a reminder to the Jaru that Earth was not without its own powerful defenders. Above the water, the Leviathan's great head emerged from the ground, its eyes glowing with a fierce, ancient intelligence. The alien ships that flew too close were met with an overwhelming display of power. The Leviathan's enormous tail lashed out, knocking entire fleets out of the sky. Its massive form moved with surprising speed, creating a terrifying spectacle of destruction as it tore through the alien forces. The Chimera and Manticore were not far behind. The Chimera, with its lion's body and dragon's wings, swooped down from the sky, using its wings to strike terror into the alien soldiers. It breathed fire, scorching the alien ships and leaving behind trails of smoke and ash. The Manticore, with its powerful scorpion tail, moved through the battlefield with deadly grace, striking at the Jaru's ground forces and causing chaos wherever it went. The humans, who had been cowering in fear, could only watch in awe and disbelief. They had never imagined that these creatures were real. They had only heard the old stories, passed down through generations, stories of the mighty beings who had once ruled the earth. But now, as they saw these monsters battling the alien invaders, they realized that their ancestors had not only been right, they had been preparing for this moment. Despite the strength of Earth's ancient creatures, the Jaru did not retreat. They were relentless. Their warships, though damaged, were far from helpless. The alien fleet reorganized and launched an all-out attack. Their weapons glowed with terrifying energy as they fired on the monsters from all directions. The battle became even fiercer as both sides clashed with everything they had. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the monsters might lose. The rear Kraken's tentacles were slashed by powerful laser beams, and the Leviathan's massive form was hit by blasts that sent it reeling. The Chimera's wings were singed, and the manticore was pushed back by a blast of energy that sent it flying through the air. It was clear that the Jaru were not giving up without a fight. But just as the monsters seemed to falter, something extraordinary happened. The humans, who had been watching from the sidelines, realized that they could not simply watch as their protectors fought. They needed to do something. They needed to help. Humanity's leaders quickly organized a counteroffensive. The military, which had been preparing for a hopeless battle against the alien forces, began to fight alongside the monsters. The human forces, using their advanced technology, focused on taking down the Jaru's warships, while the monsters kept the invaders occupied. It was a desperate attempt, but it was also their only chance. The monsters fought with wild abandon, using their immense strength and speed to overwhelm the alien forces. The Kraken, its enormous tentacles flailing wildly, crushed another alien ship, sending it spiraling into the depths. The Leviathan, now fully recovered, struck again with a powerful tail swipe, knocking down an entire line of enemy fighters. The Chimera, flying high above, used its fiery breath to burn the alien ships to cinders, and the Manticore, with its deadly tail, pierced the armor of the alien ground forces one soldier at a time. The humans were not alone in this fight. Their alliance with the monsters had proven to be the key to pushing back the alien invaders. As the Jaru's forces grew weaker, the human soldiers found new courage. The aliens, who had come to Earth expecting an easy victory, now found themselves on the defensive. But the war was far from over. The Jaru had not given up. They had one final weapon, a powerful energy source capable of destroying Earth's monsters once and for all. This weapon, hidden deep within their flagship, had been designed to counteract the power of Earth's ancient creatures. The weapon's energy field could drain the monsters' strength, leaving them vulnerable and helpless. The human forces, working in coordination with the monsters, had to find a way to disable the weapon before it was too late. Time was running out, and the fate of Earth hung in the balance. The monsters, though powerful, were not invincible. They needed the humans' help, just as much as the humans needed them. In the midst of the battle, a plan began to form. A small team of elite soldiers, guided by the monsters, would infiltrate the alien flagship. They would disable the weapon and give the monsters the upper hand. The plan was risky, and many knew that it might be their last chance to save the Earth. As the final clash between the alien fleet and Earth's monsters continued, the human soldiers made their move. They snuck aboard the Jaru flagship, using every ounce of stealth and skill they had. The battle raged on above them, but they were focused on their goal, disabling the weapon that threatened to destroy everything. With every passing minute, the tension grew. The monsters fought harder and the humans pushed forward, determined to stop the weapon and save their world. The Jaru, despite their advanced technology, were beginning to realize that their victory was no longer guaranteed. The battle between Earth's ancient monsters and the Jaru continued to rage, but beneath the surface of the fight, something more complex was unfolding. While the monsters and the alien invaders clashed in the sky and on the ground, the governments of Earth faced an entirely different kind of war, one that could decide the future of their alliance with the creatures that had risen from myth. As the world watched in awe and fear, a division began to grow within humanity's ranks. Some saw the monsters as their saviors, their protectors in a time of dire need, but others, especially among the military and political leaders, began to see them as a new threat, one that could easily turn against Earth once the Jaru were defeated. There was a growing movement, led by a group of influential generals and government officials, to control the monsters, to harness their power for their own use. They believed that humanity could not afford to rely on creatures that had no loyalty to them, creatures that had been awakened by a cry for help, not by any agreement or understanding. If the monsters could be controlled, they would be a valuable asset for the future. But if they were allowed to remain free, there was no telling what they might do once the aliens were gone. The government's plan was simple but dangerous. They would try to subdue the monsters, either by using advanced weapons or by using a device that had been created in secret for just this purpose, a collar that could control the monsters' movements and actions. It was a risky plan, and many feared the consequences of trying to control such powerful ancient creatures. On the other side, there were those who believed that the monsters should be treated as equals, as partners in the fight against the Jaru. These people, mostly scientists and some military leaders, believed that the monsters were not just protectors. They were a part of Earth's natural history, creatures that had been part of the planet long before humans had come to power. They argued that Earth's survival depended not on controlling the monsters, but on learning to work with them. They spoke of creating a lasting bond, one that would ensure that the creatures would protect the planet for generations to come. The debate continued. The monsters remained unaware of the human conflict. The Kraken continued to battle the Jaru's ships, its tentacles crushing the alien vessels with each mighty swing. The Leviathan, its enormous body moving like a living mountain, swept through the battlefield, its massive tail knocking ships from the sky. The Chimera, with its fiery breath, continued to burn through the alien forces, while the Manticore used its tail to tear through enemy ground troops. They were focused on one thing: driving the invaders away. But even as the monsters fought bravely, the humans who had once relied on them were starting to question whether they could be trusted. In one of Earth's major military bases, a secret meeting was taking place. The leaders of the movement to control the monsters had gathered to discuss their plan. They spoke in hushed tones, aware that their decisions could change the course of the war, and possibly the future of humanity itself. Once we've won, we'll need to ensure that these creatures don't turn on us. General Mitchell, one of the leaders of the faction, said, "We cannot afford to let them grow unchecked. They're powerful and we don't know what they want. What happens when the Jaru are gone? What will they do next?" Another officer, Colonel Jensen, nodded. "We've already started preparing the collars. With them, we can keep the monsters under control. Once the war is over, they'll be our assets, our ultimate weapon. We won't have to worry about any future threats." A scientist, Dr. Eleanor Gray, spoke up, her voice filled with concern. "You don't understand. These creatures are not just animals. They are intelligent beings, and we cannot simply force them to follow our orders. We don't know what will happen if we try to control them. If they resist, if they feel threatened, they could turn against us. We should be focusing on creating an understanding, not domination." "Understanding?" General Mitchell scoffed. "What if they don't want to understand us? What if they're waiting for the right moment to turn on us? We can't afford to take that risk." But Dr. Gray was not convinced. "If we do this, we will lose everything we've gained. The monsters will not trust us, and the humans who have fought alongside them will not forgive us." Meanwhile, in the heart of the war zone, a different kind of struggle was taking place. A small group of soldiers, led by Captain Olivia Grant, had been given a mission. Their goal was to find a way to destroy the Jaru's secret weapon, the Yao, one capable of neutralizing Earth's monsters. It was a dangerous mission, and they knew that the fate of the war, and possibly Earth itself, rested in their hands. Captain Grant and her team made their way through the ruins of the battlefield, avoiding the debris and wreckage of fallen alien ships. The sounds of the ongoing battle echoed in the distance, but their mission was clear. They had to reach the alien flagship and disable the weapon before it could be used. They knew that the Jaru had been preparing the weapon for some time, and now it was ready to unleash its full power. As they neared the alien flagship, they encountered resistance. The Jaru soldiers, though battered and weakened by the monsters, were still formidable opponents. They fought fiercely, determined to protect their last chance at victory. But the human soldiers pressed on, using every ounce of their training and courage to push through. As they fought their way into the heart of the Jaru ship, they realized just how much was at stake. The weapon was more powerful than they had imagined, capable of draining the strength of the monsters and leaving them vulnerable. If they failed to stop it, Earth's protectors would be rendered powerless, and the Jaru would finally have their chance to destroy humanity. In the midst of the chaos, Captain Grant received a message from General Mitchell. "We've completed preparations to control the monsters. Once you've disabled the weapon, we'll take them down. We'll make sure they don't become a threat to us again." Captain Grant paused for a moment, her heart heavy with doubt. She knew that if the general's plan succeeded, it would change everything. The bond between humanity and the monsters would be broken forever. But she had no time to question. The weapon had to be stopped. The battle continued to rage across the skies and the land. Earth's ancient monsters, fierce and determined, fought with all their might against the Jaru invaders. Yet, despite their strength and the growing alliance between humans and monsters, the Jaru were not giving up. Their warships were damaged, their soldiers worn down, but they still had one powerful weapon left, something that could change the tide of the war in an instant. It was a weapon unlike anything Earth had seen. Hidden deep within the heart of the Jaru flagship, the weapon had been designed specifically to neutralize the monsters. It emitted a powerful energy field capable of draining the strength from the creatures, weakening them to the point where they could no longer fight. The Kraken, Leviathan, Chimera, and Manticore, each of these powerful beings was vulnerable to it. But the humans had a plan. Captain Olivia Grant and her team had successfully infiltrated the alien flagship, fighting their way through the Jaru, soldiers to reach the weapon. Time was running out and the pressure was mounting. As they neared the weapon's core, the sounds of the battle above grew louder, the explosions and cries of war shaking the very walls around them. The monsters were still fighting, but their energy was beginning to falter. "We're almost there," Captain Grant said, her voice steady despite the tension. She had always been a leader, always focused on the mission. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that the stakes were higher than anything they had faced before. If they didn't succeed, Earth's monsters would fall, and the Jaru would win. Humanity's only hope would be lost. Her team moved swiftly, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the chaos of the battle outside. They reached the heart of the Jaru ship, a massive chamber filled with strange alien technology. In the center of the room stood the weapon, a massive glowing device that pulsed with an unnatural energy. "This is it," one of the soldiers whispered, his eyes wide with both fear and determination. "We disable this and the monsters will be free." "Get to work," Captain Grant ordered. "We don't have much time." The soldiers began working on the controls, their hands moving quickly over the alien interface. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, a mix of technology so advanced that it felt like magic. But they had been trained for this, trained to adapt to any situation, no matter how impossible it seemed. Meanwhile, outside the ship, the monsters were still engaged in fierce combat. The Kraken's tentacles continued to lash out at the Jaru's ships, but its movements were slower now. The Leviathan, its massive body scarred from the battle, roared as it took down another alien fighter, but its strength was fading. The Chimera's wings were singed, and the Manticore's once powerful tail had become sluggish with exhaustion. The weapon was working. The Jaru's energy field was draining their power, leaving them weaker with every passing second. But just as the situation seemed bleak, something unexpected happened. A low rumble echoed through the battlefield, followed by a deep, haunting sound that seemed to come from the very earth itself. The ground trembled as the energy field surrounding the monsters began to flicker. For a brief moment, the weapon's power weakened and the monsters regained some of their strength. The humans in the flagship looked up in shock. "What just happened?" one of the soldiers asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "I don't know," Captain Grant replied, her brow furrowed in confusion. "But it's giving us a chance. Keep working." The team redoubled their efforts, their hands flying over the controls as they worked to disable the weapon. Outside, the monsters seemed to feel the shift. The Kraken's massive tentacles twitched, its grip tightening around the Jaru's ships. The Leviathan let out a mighty roar, its tail smashing into another fleet. The Chimera took to the skies once more, its fiery breath scorching the remaining alien forces. The Manticore charged forward, its tail striking with renewed power. The Jaru fleet, though still formidable, began to falter. The weapon that had once drained Earth's protectors was now no longer functioning at full power, and the tide of battle was shifting in favor of the monsters. The alien invaders, already weakened from the constant attacks, were now facing a force that they could not defeat. Inside the flagship, Captain Grant's team had finally reached the heart of the weapon. With one final push, they disabled the power core, sending a massive surge of energy through the ship. The lights flickered, and the weapon let out a final dying pulse before going dark. "Done," one of the soldiers shouted, his voice filled with relief. "It's offline." Captain Grant let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The weapon was disabled. The monsters were free to fight with all their strength once again. But the battle was far from over. "We need to get out of here," Captain Grant said urgently. "The ship is going to blow." The team quickly turned and made their way back to the exit, their steps quickening as the sounds of explosions filled the air. The Jaru flagship was starting to crumble under the strain of the damage. The humans had to escape before it was too late. Meanwhile, outside, the battle reached its climax. The Jaru's remaining ships were retreating, their forces in disarray. The monsters, now fully restored, continued to tear through the alien fleet. The Kraken sent one last massive wave crashing into the remaining Jaru ships, sinking them into the ocean. The Leviathan unleashed a final roar, its tail sweeping across the sky as it destroyed the last of the alien invaders. With one final, mighty push, Earth's monsters had triumphed. The Jaru, defeated and broken, were forced to retreat, leaving Earth behind. As the humans emerged from the alien flagship, they could see the monsters standing tall, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. The war was over, and Earth had won. But as the dust settled and the world began to rebuild, humanity realized that this victory had come at a great cost. The monsters had saved them. But what would happen now? Would the creatures of Earth be content to return to their ancient slumber? Or would they stay watching over the world they had once ruled? As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, one thing was certain: the world would never be the same again. The battle was over, but the world was forever changed. Earth's ancient monsters had risen from the depths, their power and strength unmatched by any alien force. The Jaru invaders had been driven back, their fleet shattered, and their armies defeated. But as the final echoes of the war faded, a new question arose. What now? The monsters, though victorious, were not like the humans. They did not understand the complexities of the world they had saved. Their role had always been to protect Earth in times of great danger, and now that the danger was gone, they found themselves standing in a world that had changed in ways they could never have imagined. The Kraken, once a terrifying myth, now moved through the oceans with a new sense of purpose. Its massive tentacles stirred the water as it swam, not in anger, but in quiet contemplation. The Leviathan, towering and powerful, roamed the land, its great form casting a shadow over the Earth. The Chimera and the Manticore, having fought side by side with humans, now found themselves looking for a place to call their own. The humans, too, were uncertain. They had been saved by these ancient creatures, but now they didn't know what to do with them. The creatures were too powerful to control, too unpredictable to trust, yet they had proven to be their allies in the war, and many believed that they should be treated with respect and honor. As the world began to rebuild, the leaders of Earth faced a difficult decision. Some wanted to isolate the monsters, to keep them hidden away so they couldn't pose a threat. Others argued that the monsters should be embraced as protectors, as allies in a new age of peace. But there was no easy answer. The world was divided, and the monsters, though victorious, had no place in the new world they had helped save. Captain Olivia Grant, who had led the mission to disable the Jaru's weapon, stood in the midst of the chaos, her thoughts heavy with the weight of what had transpired. She had seen the monsters fight alongside humans, had seen them risk their lives to save Earth. She had come to believe that they were more than just creatures of legend. They were beings with their own purpose, their own will. But what would happen to them now? And what would happen to humanity? She stood on the edge of a cliff looking out over the ocean where the Kraken now swam. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the water, and for the first time in days there was a sense of peace. The battle had ended, and Earth had won. But there was still so much to figure out. A voice behind her broke the silence. "Captain Grant," said a soft voice. It was Dr. Eleanor Gray, the scientist who had worked tirelessly to understand the monsters. "We need to talk," Grant turned to face her. About what? We can't keep ignoring the fact that we've been given a gift, Dr. Gray said, her eyes serious. The monsters are not just protectors. They are part of Earth's history, part of its future. We have a responsibility to work with them, not against them. Grant frowned. I understand that, but how do we do that? They're not like us. They don't think like us. We can't control them. I'm not saying we should control them, Dr. Gray said. But we need to learn from them. They've been here longer than we have. They know this planet better than we do. We need to work with them, not fear them. Grant looked out over the ocean again, where the Kraken's massive form could be seen in the distance. She had always been a soldier, trained to fight and win. But she had come to realize that this was different. The monsters were not enemies. They were allies. The question was, how could humanity and these ancient creatures coexist? The world isn't ready, Grant said quietly. There are too many people who are afraid. Too many people who want to control them. They don't understand what they're dealing with. Dr. Gray nodded. I know, but that's why we need to start the conversation. The monsters can help us rebuild, help us understand the world in ways we never could before, but only if we learn to respect them. Grant's mind raced. The challenges were enormous. The monsters were not just powerful, they were unpredictable. They had their own needs, their own desires. They were not human and they never would be. But they had proven themselves to be Earth's greatest protectors. I'll talk to the leaders, Grant said finally. But it won't be easy. Dr. Gray smiled. It never is. The next few weeks were filled with meetings, debates, and tough decisions. The world's governments were divided on the issue of the monsters. Some leaders called for them to be removed from Earth, to be kept, isolated where they couldn't cause harm. Others argued that the monsters should be embraced, that they could help humanity rebuild after the war. It was a battle not of weapons, but of ideals. Meanwhile, the monsters continued to roam the planet, their massive forms a constant reminder of the war they had fought and won. The Kraken returned to the depths of the ocean, its tentacles no longer wrapped around alien ships but around the sea floor. The Leviathan wandered the forests and mountains, its presence a symbol of strength. The Chimera and the Manticore, though fierce, seemed more peaceful now, resting on the fringes of human society. But there were those who would never forget the fear they had felt when the monsters first appeared. Some believed that they should be kept away from the rest of humanity, isolated where they could do no harm. Others, like Captain Grant, believed that the monsters should be part of the world, their power and wisdom shared with the people who had once feared them. As the days passed, Earth slowly began to rebuild. The scars of war remained, but there was hope for the future. The monsters, once feared, had become part of the world's history. The humans who had fought alongside them were no longer afraid, but wary. The world had changed, and so had Earth's relationship with the creatures that had once ruled it. In the end, it was clear that Earth's future would be shaped by both humanity and the ancient creatures that had come to their aid. The monsters were not just part of the past, they were part of the future, and together they would forge a new path for Earth.